Talk about love, like you and me all night, and let's talk about love. I'm feeling alright, and let's talk about love. Yeah, baby, come and dance with me. You're everything I'll ever need. So let's talk about love.
Hi guys,
Hello, this is Jacob.
and Dillis. Today we're having some technical difficulties, but I think we've figured it out. So, welcome to the Let's Talk live chat on communication. As always, we're going to start with a prayer, and Jacob will lead us in that.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of the faithful, and enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. O Lord, who by the light of the Holy Spirit did instruct the hearts of the faithful, grant that by the same Spirit we may be truly wise and ever rejoice in his consolation through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so as usual, today we would be diving into, um, we'll be talking about financial management in marriage. We put out the podcast on Monday, and today we're going to go in and, as usual, just do a recap of uh, of the topic, and then we'll take some questions. And if you have any questions from the audience, we can take your questions too. We have about 4 questions that we already have prepped that we would answer, and then we'll open it up for others to answer. Unfortunately, today we don't have a couple um, that will be spotlighting because our couple wasn't able to join us. But that's life. You adjust and you roll with it. So, Jacob, do you want to take us on the recap? Why I try to do some technical postings on this end?
Yes. So again, if you got the chance to review the podcast on Monday, this will be a nice refresher for you. If you didn't, don't worry. We're gonna recap on just the main themes. And so, in our podcast on Monday, we talked about we briefly covered why people struggle with money, and the reason really is because we have different orientations to money through our background from our family and all of that. And so, in marriage, you are usually bringing in two people that have two different orientations to money, and because of that, our early experiences that might have shaped our relationship with money, how we value money, would then play a role in the integration of our financial situation. So money operating metaphorically in our lives, representing many other things such as security, nurturance, opportunity, trust, and the relationship between dependence and independence. So sometimes then you're not surprised that money can be a major cause of conflict. It can be the reason why you have the landmine. And one of the other things we covered was the different ways that people view money. Uh, so there are actually 4 ways by which people view money, which Dilys and I refer to as your money language. When you talk about the 5 languages of apology or the 5 languages of love, these are the 4 languages of money. People can either view money as a status, people tend to view money as security, or they view money as enjoyment, or finally, they can view money as control. So what does it mean when people view money as secure as status? People those that view money as status, they tend to look up to people that are financially successful, and then they think that that is a it. That's what they look that's what they want to become. So such people tend to make measure purchases, and they consider what others would think about their choice. They will think having high quality things reflects well on them, and it's important for them to maintain a lifestyle similar to or preferably better than that of their peers. So for them, it's all about status. These people think ostentation, they think exclusivity, they think more of club, belonging to a club.
And I think that, Jacob, as you talk, it's very important for people to understand that There's no right or wrong language. Everybody has their language that was built from their childhood days, and the way they've had to deal with money over their lifetime. So it's just a matter of recognizing that this is the way I look at money, this is the way my spouse looks at money, and then from there, you guys can really have a communication, a way of communicating around it, right? So you
Yeah.
have the people that are money as security.
Yeah, so then that brings us, thank you, Delis, to people that look at money as security. We're not castigating or favoring any one type.
You're
And
talking so fast, Jacob.
yeah, and they say sometimes that this is me. But really, people like me are those that having money in our savings is very important to them. They'll rather have an extra money in the bank than some new purchase. They prefer safe investing with a moderate return versus high risk investing with potentially high return. So people like me, they don't deal in the stock market that much, or otherwise, or even in the stock market, they want to do things that are more short term and clearer. So they feel more secure generally when they know that they have enough money for their bills.
Yeah. So I think that if I go back to just relating this to us, Jacob, I remember us just when we got married, me understanding this part about you was very crucial because prior to that is when we were in a financial crunch, I could tell because there's always tension. But for me, I'm thinking there's money, right? What's the issue? But because you see money as security, you don't only look at the now, you look at 3 months from today, 6 months from today. So you're never just in the presence like people like me who see money as enjoyment, just stay in the present.
So yeah. So this is right there. That's kind of like a segue to the third category of people. The people that tend to view money as enjoyment. For such people, they work hard, but they are, and for them is to have job security. When you have job security and they know that they're gonna have the next paycheck, they don't have any problem spending money now. So they enjoy shopping. They enjoy buying things. They enjoy spending money on people. They believe in that very big and expensive vacation, that big and expensive showy occasion. So they live
Yeah,
by the motto of money can buy happiness. And as Liz would like to say, but she will say, but it sure helps. Uh, and so this would really contrast with the first category of the second category of people that I mentioned, which is people looking at money as security, because those such people are very good at forecasting. The people that look at money as enjoyment, they are not into forecasting. They're into, yeah, we have the funds now, let's spend. I know I'm going to go back to work again tomorrow. Doesn't matter. You don't know if tomorrow you might not even be able to go to work because you're sick or something. And then the last category of people really look at money as control. Okay, these are people that in the course of their growing up, they might have had a few run-ins with people that are financially successful, and they could have felt like they were being looked down upon, or as not good enough. And so
hmm
for them, it has always been very important to have money because they think it gives them power, the sense of control. So such people want to control the purse strings and they call the shots. They'll be very uncomfortable putting all their money into any joint account. So such people will always be insisting on separate accounts. They're not refusing to have their responsibility, but they just prefer to have control of what they're earning while living up to their responsibility. For them, one of the important benefits of money is really the ability to influence others. So they think that each person should really control the money they earn.
yeah. So when you think about these five money languages, right? I think for me, understanding that from each of our perspective has really changed the way we talk about our money, the way we see money, the way we communicate about it. Because I think that you tend to show me a lot of grace when I'm going on one of my enjoyment sprees with money because you understand that okay, that's how I see money.
I can see it from a mile away, but then my reaction is not like in those first 5 years when we're still struggling to integrate our lives.
Yeah.
And I just felt like she was just a big spender, or that there was no purpose to spending. But it had to do with the way her brain is wired, not because she was really trying to impress anybody. You know, and on the other side, she thought that I was too unnecessarily frugal. But immediately we understood this thing of the language of money, then
Yeah.
everything just clicked.
Yeah. So now I at least I know that I can't go on an enjoyment spree if you are not secured for 3 months with what are we doing financially 3 months. So at least we can plan ahead of this. And I think understanding this was really what I needed to be able to buy into us making a plan, especially the budget plans, our budgeting that we do, right? For me to be able to spend time and really work on budgeting with you, it came from the fact that I understood that if you could, whenever you could see into the future and saw that, okay, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, you were fine, you were more relaxed, you could really enjoy your own money, because this doesn't mean that you don't want to enjoy money. And I think that that's one of the things that we should also emphasize. The person that sees it as control, or sees it as status, or sees it as security, though it's not that they don't want the other ones. It's just that it is priority for them that there's security. It's priority for
Is
them
their
that they have
primary
that
language. It's
control.
more like your
Yeah,
native tongue. Yeah.
yeah.
And so the other things that we covered during that podcast obviously is, if you have started off right off the bat and you're lucky enough in the early days of marriage, or even before marriage, if you went through a marriage prep and you were lucky enough to be able to understand the money language of your spouse, then we went through now the four foundational concepts
Mhm.
of financial management in a marriage. And the first one, Idris, you want to take that, financial
Yeah.
unity.
Financial unity. This is the most controversial one that we whenever we talk about, a lot of people say, What did you say? Well, marriage, after marriage, it is no longer your money, my money. It is now our money, right? It is now our debt. It is now our savings. So you two have not just said I do to each other's body, or to each other's minds, or to each other's love. You've also said I do to each other's bank account, to each other's debt, to each other's savings, right? And so this is a fundamental concept, because once as you realize this, you now know that, like Jacob discovered, right? He didn't go to school here, so he didn't get to amass school loans, but he married a girl that was going to school here. And so what did he inherit as a married man? School loans, right? And um my credit score is now his credit score, right? It becomes his responsibility to make sure that it gets fixed if he is the credit
Yeah.
building
So
person.
when you think financial unity, then you get reminded of for better for worse, right? In marriage, on that day when you're making the vows, and with all the excitement and euphoria of love, you never thought much about it. You're thinking for better for worse. You're thinking worse is, oh, maybe she might be sick, or maybe she might be involved in a car accident or something like that. But really, it's getting but into the fact that in the process of trying to unify your finances, you might find out some very tricky things about your spouse. The amount, just the sheer amount of debt they are in, or their total lack of understanding about credit scoring. And so while you're agreeing that, oh, the two became one, remember that the two became one in every single aspect. And therefore, obviously, including finances, and finances being the very biggest one, because that's going to be the biggest landmine. And so, when you leave from that fundamental concept of financial unity, if you agree on that and it's become clear to you, and you also have an understanding of your money language, then the obvious thing is, what do you do with money when you have unified your finances? You can only do three things with money. You can only either be spending money, saving it, or sharing it. And you actually have to do all three. So the question is, in what proportion do you do those three for it to work? So you have to agree on the percentage of your income that you would save, what percentage of your income you're going to be spending, and
Hmm.
what percentage you're gonna share. There's so many books on how to divvy up your income in these three
Hmm.
buckets.
Yeah.
Okay, but one that is very popular is the concept of the 80-10-10. 80% being what you spend, because the first reason why you're working is because you need to be able to live your daily life, have a roof over
Yes.
your head, feed your kids, and all of that. So you likely find yourself spending up to 80% of your income, depending on how much you earn. And in the early years, it might actually be higher than that. And then it might be decreasing as your incomes get better. and then you might be able to spend 10% for the rainy days, and that 10% is very important with people like me that see money as security.
Yeah.
Okay, then the last one is sharing. Sharing is really referring to charitable work. The church sometimes talks about tithing 10%, but it's anything they are doing that doesn't have any direct benefit to you, for anybody, maybe the homeless, the sick, the oppressed, um, those without clothing, non-family members that you're providing help to, and then obviously, if you're a member of a church, your church, making sure that the lights are on in your church, helping the clergy, the pastors, people that have given up their lives in service of humanity. All of that will get into their bucket of 10%.
I think that here it's very important for if you've not yet gotten married and you're thinking about getting married. These are some very good conversations to have with with your
Your fiance,
fiance,
boyfriend,
right?
future spouse, yeah.
What is that expectation when it comes to spending, saving, and sharing, right? Or
Or
tithing, as
charitable
they
work, yeah.
say, charity, right? Because if your partner has a totally different expectation in terms of how much they are going to spend from their paycheck, how much they're going to save, how much they're going to give to God. That alone is a whole argument. It's a whole conflict area if you guys don't sit down and talk about it. Luckily enough for us, I don't think we differ too much on that, on what we will spend, what we'll save, what we'll share. So it was an easy conversation, but it's really a conversation that everybody needs to have. And if you've never had it, it's time to have it. Just sit down and say, hey, this is how much we make. I know that I always say the funny story about, or the very real story about the very first time Jacob did this with me, and he actually had his pen and paper out, and he's like, okay, this is our expenses, this is what we make, and went through and took us down the line until the at the last end of it. I saw that okay, we were already in the red just from taking care of what we make. So this is a point where it's really important to have this conversation with each other. How much are we going to spend? How much are we going to save? How much are we going to share?
Yeah, so thank you. So that takes us to point number three, the third fundamental concept in financial planning, which is agreeing before you spend. So yes, it's not as simple as agree that we're going to spend 80% of our income. Okay. But when you agree on that 80%, it doesn't mean, oh, now we're all making $100 each. So we're free to spend $80. Then you just go out there and start spending willy nilly. No, you remember again, there's financial unity. So you have to agree that neither of you will make a major purchase without consulting the other person, and the two of you have to give a dollar amount, a dollar value to that, to the term measure purchase, and do realize that that dollar value might change over time depending on your exact financial situation. I like to give the example of Delisa and myself. When we got married and moved in together, I was a postdoctoral fellow, which means I was essentially still a student that had more of a stipend. She was still a student in college. So our combined incomes were not that great. And so for us, guess what that dollar amount was? $25, because $25 was really big for us. So neither of us had to spend $25 without telling somebody, telling the other person to be aware.
Yeah.
And over time that grew to $50, then $100, and it's a little bit more now. But still, you have to have a dollar value. And then that is agreeing on those type of expenses that are spontaneous, but otherwise most of your other expenses, therefore, above that dollar value, are things that you guys plan and agree on. That's the only way by which you end up being able to buy a house. That's the only way by which you end up being able to buy a car.
Yeah.
Significant expenses that require planning, you can only do them if you communicate with each other about spontaneous expenses, which means it's going to take a lot for you to be able to do a surprise for your spouse. That's going to take a lot of money.
Yeah. So when we talk about that, I think someone is sitting there asking, how do you manage this dynamic of talking with your spouse about anything you're going to spend more than $25? And it was a mindset shift. It was a change because the very next principle we're going to talk about is deciding who is playing the role of the bookkeeper, right? And in our dynamics, Jacob was playing the role of the bookkeeper. And so most of the time it was me calling to say I have to spend $25 on this, or I want to spend more than $25 on this. And I literally found myself in a store before, and about to swipe the card, and I have to call him because the card might not have the money that I need. And um, I think that I point that out to say this can only work if you have a mindset where you're being graceful towards each other. You know, when I call from the store and I have to buy that grocery, he has to then think to himself that, okay, she's already at the store. Let me figure out a way to get her to purchase this. But also, it makes for a tense conversation. I think one or two times we've had very tense conversations where you're telling me there's no money, Dillis. You have to not buy XYZ so that we we, we don't bounce our checking account into the red. So having that conversation is one of the most humbling things you can do in your marriage, but it works. And if you guys approach it by showing grace to each other, by being mindful about not belittling the other person, you just would only end up reinforcing the trust you have between each other.
So thank you, Lewis. You went right there to the very last fundamental concept of financial management, which is assignment of roles in marriage. And please be mindful of the fact that this is not a gender specific thing. So it's not automatically it's going to be the woman or be the bookkeeper or it's going to be the man. It boils down to how you value money. And it turns out the people that value money as security usually tend to be better bookkeepers because they're better at tracking if every single bill is being paid. They're better at remembering how much is left in what bank account and what credit card still has an available balance that you can spend on. Unlike the person that is money as a spender, just such people that turn as enjoyment. People that view money as enjoyment, a lot of the time they find out that the card is maxed out, but when they're already at the checkout counter. That wouldn't happen with somebody that has money, that constant money as security. They tend to know what balances are on what credit cards and what balances are on what bank accounts. So sometimes what the way they come in is really telling you what debit card to use when. It's not really about controlling and stopping you from shopping, because I can tell you specifically which of our many debit cards or credit cards you should use at what time. Okay. And so this person that keeps you on track with the financial plan is the person that you want to be your bookkeeper. But if both of you view money as security, and then maybe you can take turns being bookkeepers.
Yep.
That's one of the things you could do. It doesn't have to be one person's role the entire time, because really it's not even a fun job to be the bookkeeper for the house. So there you go. Those are your four fundamental concepts of financial planning as a couple. You have to think about financial unity. You have to remember that you have three things you do: money, you spend, you save, you do charity. You have to agree on spending money when you're doing a measure purchase, put a dollar amount on what the measure purchase is. And finally, and most importantly, assign a rule to a bookkeeper. Assign one of you to the one that's responsible for tracking your bills. Even if you had a common account where money comes into for spending, that has to do with the bills. Somebody's responsible for making sure that bills are paid on time. And that takes us then to the next topic, which is budgeting.
Yeah. So the person called Itacola Grill says, interesting discussion. Yeah, you can join the discussion by just posting comments or questions, and we can be able to take it live as we talk. And the next concept we talked about is budgeting, because when you understand your money language, and then you understand these four concepts we've talked about, the very first place I think any couple can start from is just making a budget.
And the great thing about making a budget is that it actually brings into focus what your true combined income is. Okay. And it really helps you guys with forecasting.
Yeah.
And then it becomes less difficult or situation when somebody when somebody's telling you, please, you can't spend more than $25 or 50 or 100 or 20, depending on your combined financial situation, before we have a conversation around it, because it's a very clear picture. And then you don't get up and spend that 200 bucks in your bank account because you have the
Yeah.
200 bucks. You don't understand why the other person cannot say you cannot spend it, because based on your budget for the year, that $200 is probably accounted for 3 months down the line, even though you're seeing it sitting in the account now. Based on the fact that, that the person that is playing the bookkeeping role is aware that there's a check out there for that $200, and if you spend it now, it's going to bounce. So that's where budgeting really
Yeah.
brings your whole financial situation into focus.
Yeah, and I think that it can go either way. But what we found best is do it at the beginning of the year and just come back to it at least once a month and see where you are. There are some apps that you could use that are out there that would make your life easier to just put it into the app and you look at it later, or some software programs, some free ones, some paid ones, or you could just download a template, a Excel template from a Google search, and that would get you started on making a budget. I think Jacob and I have the very first one we have, and if you inbox us or send us a message, we'll be able to send you the template that we use. Because I think we took our own template and really customized it. I could say we Africanized it because there were a lot of things on the template from the internet that were not on the template, like what you give to your mother or father-in-law or brother-in-law that you know you're trying to help, or this child in Cameroon that you're trying to help. All of those things were not there. So you have to add them in, that way you truly know your expenses, and then you can go from there to figure out how much money you have left.
Yeah, and two very great advantages actually of budgeting is, uh it helps you with your relationship with people that sometimes reach out to you for help. You're more you're less guilty when you're saying no, because when you're saying no, you can be you know for a fact that it's not working with the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, many a times when our budgets were out of work, like we're not really focused on the budget. Have I taken out $100 or $50 and say, oh, it's just $50? Oh, our class is doing this thing, so I'm gonna contribute my $50, only to wire that $50 and the next day account was in the red because I wasn't forecasting based on the budget. The other very powerful thing with budgeting is that you can clearly see your shortfall as a family months in advance, and that can
Mhm.
actually give somebody the motivation to go and do the things that can improve on your income. So that if you're trying to make an argument that I absolutely have to spend this $50,000 on this big venture, you can be able to say, and I think I can make that up by either doing this many extra shifts, going on this travel nursing program, or whatever it is. Oh, I'm going to take this short course that will allow me to do this second gig on the side. So you're more intentional. Sometimes even be able to plan things 2 years down the line. So it's easier for you to say, no, we cannot do this project in May this year. It looks more like it should be May of next year because of the budgeting. But if you're just dealing with money hitting your account every 2 weeks and then spending from there, you always find yourself playing catch up and you don't understand what is going on. But the two of you are working.
Yeah. And I think that that's an important part to focus on, that part about finding yourself playing catch up. It needs, of all these things we've talked about, you need to also understand that self control part where you actually are holding back on some of these things. And it's usually the person that is money as security that starts telling you, no, let's not do it now, let's wait for a week, let's wait for a month. But you on the other side needs to hold back yourself to understand what they're saying. And if you don't, then you find yourself chasing money to the detriment of your relationship, of your family, right? I mean, how many times have we heard of someone that had to that have worked themselves to death, or someone that have worked themselves out of their relationship, right? Because they were over there looking for money, and then the spouse or the children left behind, um, that relationship collapsed. So it's really important to put it in focus so that you really truly know that, look, this is needed. And if the two of you agree that this is needed, then you know these are sacrifices that you make. But when the two of you don't agree that this is needed and you're out there trying to get X, Y, or Z, you end up doing it at the detriment of your relationship and of your family.
Yeah, and another beauty about budgeting you will notice is that there seems to be direct correlation between how much you earn and how comfortable you are. up to a certain point, it plateaus. In my experience, it plateaus right around maybe $80,000 a year. But most people want to make six figures. What I've realized in talking to many couples is beyond 80 to maybe $90,000 a year for a couple. Whatever happens with your finances depends on if you're budgeting. If you're not budgeting, the $300,000 couple is struggling as much as a $60,000 couple a year.
Yeah.
They just because it's very easy to spend 80% of your income. It doesn't matter if it's $800,000 or it's $80,000.
Yeah.
Of course, below $80,000, you can only do so much, but you can still cut your code according to your size based on what our parents taught us. At $80,000, you can still live in a your very comfortable townhome, depending on what type part of the country you're living in. You will drive your really functional car without driving luxury cars. But when you increase somebody's income by just $20,000 and hit 100,000, suddenly because it's six figures, they start thinking that now they can buy a Lamborghini. But the difference between the price of that Lamborghini and your regular Lexus is more than that $20,000 that your income has increased in. But they're thinking six figures, and
Yeah.
then and then the person that has gone from 150 to $250,000 suddenly gets to expenses that net by the end of the year, the overall impact of that new purchase is more than $100,000 increase in income. That's because they don't have a budget. So
Well,
you stop seeing a budget as your income keeps going up because you've already plateaued. The impact of the value that the extra income is bringing in is lost absent any budget.
I
It
think
requires a
that's
lot
where
more. So the higher you earn, then budgeting becomes a lot more important for you to actually see the impact of that increase in income.
I think that's where you lose some of us money as enjoyment people because you start saying all those math. But I think bottom line, what you always tell me is that the list we don't have the money to make this extra expense that I'm trying to budget in because I saw an extra $2,000 in the account. Because that extra $2,000 now spares me on to want to make a $5,000 purchase when it's really 2,000 that we have, right? And
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even that it's obvious that is the problem is that the true cause of the purchase sometimes is hidden. Like you see $2,000, you've actually gone and spent only $1,800. You've not even used the $2,000, but what happened? You've gone and bought something that costs $3,000 to maintain, who's
yeah,
maintaining. So it's in the back end that you're seeing that. But if you were budgeting, then you realize that, oh, if I'm in a budget, we'll put a car. There's also supposed to be insurance costs for that car, right? There's also supposed to be maintenance costs for that car, and so many other things. But you're only thinking about that initial price of it, and then you think it's gonna work. And it's okay to think about it. Usually, people usually just think about an initial price when there's no budgeting involved because you're focused on trying to buy that item now.
yeah.
But when you budget, you suddenly realize that there's other fine details that you have to add to your expense to the expense line of your budget. And the same thing in your income line of your budget. You start seeing that there are ways you could actually even improve on your income or cut back on your expense, and net you'll be fine as a family.
So I think we have Life Taste says, I love this couple. And then we have a question from Bitacola Grill. I'm suspecting who Bitacola is, but I'm not quite sure, so I won't call their name out loud. It says is there a particular time period when the couple needs to come together to evaluate what has been spent and what is still left in the saving, or is it just depend it or it just depends on the set budget?
So I can take a bite at it. So if you listen to the list at the beginning when we talked about budgeting, you want to do it at the beginning of every year because we function calendar year. In the United States, you file your taxes for January to December,
Mhm.
sometime before April 15, and you get your tax return, which means you want to also budget that way. And then most of our expenses are towards the end of the year because we have Christmas and New Year. But the beauty about budgeting nowadays is that there are a lot of very simple softwares out there that you don't need to be an accountant. You don't need to know anything about financing. Most companies, most employers, as part of their 401k plans, offer budgeting tools that are software online that you can hook them up with all your bank account and all your credit cards into a single portal that creates bank feeds. So whenever you and your spouse meet for your budget meeting on a monthly basis, uh, Dills and I have a goal of monthly, but I have to be honest with you, it doesn't happen all the
All
time
the
that way.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you end up doing it at least once every 3 months, when you guys meet, if you just log into that portal where you have already put the bank fee to bank all your bank accounts and all your credit cards,
Hmm.
it just runs the numbers for you and shows you how much you spend on each debit card, what how much you spend on
Hmm.
each credit card, and what category you're spending on between hospitality like restaurant visits, hotel visits, travel like air tickets, Uber rides, cab rides, car rental, and then food and then other things, entertainment. If you're going to school and you bought books, it's going to put it on all those categories. And then it's going to also show your income with the sources of your income. If you have a very simple income because you just have one job and your wife and your spouse has one job, that's all what is going to you're going to see that that's the only where money is coming in. If you belong to some jangi, you see some of the one you pick, then jangi is going to show up as income with a spark in your income that month.
Hmm.
And so sometimes you can do projections too, then based on, oh, I'm anticipating picking this Jangi in 4 months, so we'll be able to use it for last purchase. With that budgeting, sometimes what happens is that you might even pick a Jangi, and then 2 months down the line, you turn around and ask your spouse, who's that other money go? Where did the money of that Jangi go to? Because you did not budget, right? Same thing, you get
Yes.
you guys are lucky enough, you're blessed that you're in a job, you have jobs that give you a bonus at the end of the year. You get the bonus, and then 2 months down the line, you guys are struggling, and you're like, whatever happened to that bonus? Because you did not
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take some questions. I think we had 4 questions, Jacob. You want to read the first one?
Now we have another question. I think we should
Oh,
take the
we
ones
did?
that are coming up. There's another question for Banky Banker that says, "Can you function as a couple without budgeting? Is budgeting not source of trouble?" Yeah. Do you want to take that, Dillis?
Well, I would use us as an example. I used to think that it was a source of trouble, especially because I saw it as a, a a way of controlling what I spend, right? But I think that what has happened over time is I've been able to understand that the budgeting has only given me the ability to actually put what my own core needs are, or core wants. Let me put them as wants, because our needs, we generally have them in the budget, but I also have wants. I want to go on that vacation. I want to out every month on dinners, it's also afforded me the opportunity to put in those wants. And I think that that's where you change it from being a source of trouble to an actual tool that can work for you, because you not only budget for the needs that you have, you also budget for the wants that each other have, and you budget for those wants out of the left out of what's left after your needs have been spent, right? So Jacob would naturally tell me, you can see this, there is all of this that we've done. This project you wanted to do is not gonna be possible, because this year we can't save enough to be able to do this project, right? And that only allows for one, a conversation between us on when that project is going to be possible. And I think we do a good job about holding each other responsible, right? If we say the project is not possible now, and these 3 things need to be done before that project is possible, and when those 3 things are done, we do that project. And so it only helps me to be more trusting about where his direction is, where he's taking us financially when we budget. But
Okay.
I think that it's a real tool, and can be a very good tool to use if you consider both each other's needs and wants in it.
Yeah. So, but I have to say that this is a very important question. I really like the question, and I'll start by saying that budgeting is as much a source of trouble in marriage as money itself is a source of trouble in marriage, and not preparing yourself and understanding each other's money language is already preparing, setting yourself up to be unsuccessful in your marriage, to be very miserable in your marriage.
Yeah.
Once you understand each person's money language, budgeting actually ends up being a safety net. That's what's going to protect you. Because again, when you approach budget with your communication tools, if you understand how to communicate with each other. That's essentially what you're doing at the budget. You're not coming budgeting with a plan that you're going to try to prevent your spouse from ever doing what they want, spending on their needs or on their wants. No. What you guys are trying to do is to lay out this is really what we can bring in, depending on how much transparency you want to bring, because you have to be transparent about your income. But depending on how far you're willing to be transferring your income, whatever level of transparency you have, that's what you're bringing to the budgeting table and saying, this is what is coming in. If you all have agreed on what is coming in, if you try to hide, even if you try to hide a portion of it, but once you guys have agreed on what exactly is coming in, then the next thing is based on what is coming in, as I like to say, numbers don't lie. You can only spend what is coming in, and then hopefully there's a difference. And even if you don't like to save, but you start talking the language of projects, then there has to be some money kept aside for that project. If this is January and we're talking about our kids' graduation in May and planning to do a party in May, there's no way that our earnings in May can pay for that graduation party, unless, except we're not going to be able to pay our mortgage. So we have to plan for that graduation party now in January. And then, by the way, our cousin is getting married in August and he's getting married in Punta Cana in Mexico, and we're going to be going there. So, and that's going to be an expense in August on top of our general expenses that happen regularly that involves the mortgage and all of that. And so, but it still boils down to you guys knowing exactly what was coming in. So there's no reason to be quarreling because you guys know exactly what is coming. You're just trying to figure out how that money will be spent so they
Mhm.
can be able to do all these things they want to do. Then suddenly you'll be able to, it'll be easy for you to go back, I guess, agree that, well, we cannot do this thing this year. We cannot do this one this year. Oh, this one is a priority. We should really make sure that we do it this year.
Yeah,
And,
we
and,
have.
and, and once you put it that all together like that, as I like to say, numbers do not lie.
Well, Jacob really annoys me without his numbers don't lie statement because sometimes numbers are not quite what you need them to say. They're not saying what you need them to say. They might not be lying, but they're not saying what I need them to say. But
Yeah,
and I
and
think
sorry, and Banky asked
this
another
is the
question,
next
which,
question that he's
yeah,
asking.
that what if your source of finance can only budget for your needs and not your wants? And what is the way out of satisfying your wants? Credit card. Yeah, and this takes us to a completely different topic and a very huge one, which is credit buying. I don't think that we can even begin to address that here, but yes, uh, the Bible is replete with warnings about getting in debt, right? But at the same time, it talks about debtors and people forgiving people's debts and all of that. So there are going to be times that you need to spend more than what you earn, which still makes budgeting to make sense. Because when you project out and realize that you have this very important event coming up in May, and this is January, and you look at your income between now and May, and you cannot see how you guys can afford it, but that event is an absolute. Then you already are planning in January that you're going to borrow money in April to fund that activity in May, with a plan of how you can increase your earnings between May and the 12 months that it takes to pay that loan, and or you're figuring out what expenses you're going to have to drop to be able to pay that loan. Because when you take the loan, just like you as you obviously know, even with credit card, it's not free money. There's going to be a day that is due, and it's not due just the exact amount that you borrowed. It's due with interest. And the worst one with credit cards, which I said is a very big and separate topic, is that you might end up paying several times more than what you borrowed. And you can that and that the $100 credit card bill can follow you for decades. Unlike a fixed $100 loan that has a fixed term that you can pay in 3 months or in 12 months or however long. So yes, there are going to be times that you're going to have to spend outside of your earnings, but it's not really outside of your budget. Is that you would have budgeted that debt already before time because you're anticipating that coming.
But I think he says something about the play on the wants and the needs, right? If your finances uh, can only budget for your needs, what do you do about your wants?
You cannot borrow to fulfill wants. You cannot borrow
Yeah,
just to be able to take an expensive vacation.
yeah,
You have to take a vacation that you can afford.
yeah.
But again, human beings are kind of funny because if your spouse, their money language is enjoyment, sorry, sometimes you have to speak their money language too if you want to stay in that marriage. And so what
Even if you
happens
have
is
to
that
borrow.
even if you have to borrow, yes. And because this is what's going to happen, your wife is going to rearrange their wants and their needs. They're going to make you people to take care of her wants first. So that when she then presents a need, when you have run out of money, you have to then fulfill that need by borrowing. They will not tell you to borrow to fulfill their want. They'll be very careful to make sure that they take care of their wants first and then present by the need to you. And so every now and then you find yourself having to fulfill a want for somebody that has money as enjoyment because that's the language you speak. While at the same time they understand that you have money as security and they're allowing you to manage the books. You have to give them that perk every now and then. But everything has to be in the budget.
Yeah.
Budgeting does not mean that you can only spend what you're earning. Sometimes you might have to borrow. I mean, if you guys are going to own a house in the United States, you have to borrow, right?
Yeah.
And then you're putting a bank. It's just that you're convincing yourself that's a safe investment because an asset and it's going to be growing in value. But it's not guaranteed. The house values might crash at some point.
So and I just want to say that it's not all the time that you have to borrow to meet a want. It's in the way you communicate that that want is not going to be able to be accomplished in your life. And I take us back. I say this story all the time. When we just met and we're trying to settle our lives, I was thinking about having a wedding. To me, it was more important to have a wedding. Right? And at that time, like he says, he was on a stipend. I didn't even know what a stipend was. I just knew I was married to this man that was working. I didn't realize that his work was student work, right? But at that time, I thought it was more important for us to go to church and do this wedding. And he had to sit me
Well,
down.
so the list is you're right. That is more important to go to church. That's if that's all you were thinking. That would be fantastic because then you do a wedding with four
All
people.
right, yes.
You
At
get a
that time, I thought
sacramental
we
marriage.
needed to have a
You were
big
thinking
wedding.
about a party. So say
Oh,
you wanted a party, don't say you wanted to go to church and get married.
all right. At that time, I thought we needed to have the big wedding.
Exactly.
But
So that was the problem.
you sat me down, and I think you had this conversation with me that was very profound, where you didn't just belittle the fact that I wanted this wedding. You really talked about this is how we can get to the wedding. Like you, it's almost like you showed me a vision of how you the roadmap to get to that wedding, and that was my want, right? That was not our need. We didn't need that wedding to survive, but we I wanted it. So you showed us that vision to get there. I mean, you told me it wasn't necessary now, but if I worked hard, if I graduated from my nursing program and started working, we were going to be able to afford to make the wedding, and which now focused me on doing my nursing program, graduating, getting my
To
boards
have that
within a
extra
week,
income.
and starting a job so we could get the extra income to be able to afford the wedding. And I think that that is that conversation. If I'm talking to Banker here, that is that conversation that's needed. When you cannot meet the want, how do you address it with your spouse? Do you actually sit them down and explain to them that we can't meet it now, but this is the vision for us meeting it, and this is how we can work towards meeting it?
Yeah, listen, I'm glad you said that. So part of what budgeting does, Banky Banker, is it takes the sting out of it looking like, oh, you have to do something for your spouse. And then it starts being, and also prevents it from looking like, oh, you fell short, you couldn't do it. The budget is what it is. Your spouse would sit down with you and sees that this is what is coming in. This is the things that you guys have as fixed expenses. And so this is only the wiggle room for what the difference is. And so your spouse should not be saying, oh, you did not buy me this, you did not buy me that. No, I could have bought it if the funds were there. I could borrow the money, but even with borrowing, when you put in the budget, is okay. What's the plan to pay back? And that brings, I don't know, we're coming up to the top of the hour, but this is another very, very important question from Peter Colagrio. And it says, with this hard economy, how do you start budgeting when take home pay cannot even take you out of your work environment? Exactly why you should budget. It's
Yes.
exactly how you can budget. If my wife and I survived, especially in the early years when it was very frugal and we barely made any money, it was actually because we were budgeting. And then from that point on to where I'm saying that there's this correlation between what you make and your lifestyle and success and happiness. Budgeting is what saved us. But even when you start making a lot more money, budgeting is what then keeps you guys married because people would
Yeah.
want to start doing crazy things just because
Yeah.
they think I'm making six
Yeah.
figures now. But guess what? You might find yourself making six figures. We see it all the time. You see professionals, and then the next thing you're hearing is that they're foreclosed on their house, that they're going apart, and they're all fighting about money
Yeah.
because they don't know what is happening with their money. They keep wondering what happened to it. If it's disappeared, if it's witchcraft or something. But it's not witchcraft. The numbers do not lie. If you just simply budgeted and you both agreed on what was coming in, and which means how much can go out, and what things you can fund with debt, life will be so easy. But there's no better time to budget than when the times are hard. Our parents did this, and it was and when times were hard, our parents borrowed from Jangis that they were members from, and then they played that Jangi faithfully throughout the year. I think about my dad that made 30,000 francs a month, and he had 10 kids, and five of us were in boarding schools. I don't remember anybody that ever came to our compound and helped my dad to the neck that he was owing him and had not paid. All he did was live within his means.
So I think that there's a question here that I also wanted to bring up. It says it's one of the ones that came in to our scenarios. It says we we recently faced a major financial setbacks due to a job loss. While we were working on getting back on track, this situation has led, while we are working on getting back on track, this situation has led to stress and argument about money, priorities, and future planning. What are some strategies for for us to cope effectively and support each other through financial crisis without letting it negatively impact our relationship? So I think this is a situation of a couple where one person is not working and the other person is working. So one of them has lost the job.
It's, can I
So
take that?
like
Go ahead,
strategies, yeah.
Dennis.
No,
Yeah.
you go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, so I mean, when they say you get married for better or for worse, is I don't think that solving a financial crisis is any different from suddenly having a very sick child or having a spouse that has a disability. You have to deal with that scenario. It's very stressful, so you cannot pretend about it. It's
Yeah.
one of those times when life takes a difficult turn. But I'll still come back to budgeting, budgeting, budgeting. It's not that you're going to start budgeting then when that crisis happens. If you already have a history of budgeting as a family, the only way you're going to get through those difficult times is doubling down on budgeting. It's a very difficult time, but because you're already used to managing your finances together, you're going to be able to survive it. But it's going to be a lot of arguing. There's going to be a lot of quarreling. But that's going to be around where are we going to cut. You're going to have that to the extent that you might have to give up your home. You might have to leave that your big single family home and move into an apartment, move into a duplex, you know, but just doing whatever you can. One of you might have to go back to school while the other person is holding down the fort.
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to that communication, right? What are some strategies? Because we've been in this situation before, not a loss of job per se, but when we just started the our
Our
business,
business.
and we were everything that we had was going into it, and I think we had to have that hard conversation of what are we gonna do at this moment because we didn't have enough to make the all the bills. And you said it's about talking about it ahead of time and it not coming as a reaction to a crisis. For example, we realized that we had to cut TV, right? We realized that we had to come down to basic internet at home. We realized that those are all the hard decisions that we had to make. I guarantee you, if I walked into the house one day and just saw that the TV was cut, it would have been a quarrel between the two of us. But because we were able to look at it and say, based on the budget, we will not be able to pay all these bills by the end of next month. So we need to cut them off. So that became something that we agreed on and cut. I mean, I can remember the only time that we ended up going back and forth or having a disagreement back then was on our insurance, right? Because we
I
were
was willing to cut even payment for the health insurance.
what do you mean by you were willing? You did
I
cut
actually did
payment for
that
the
for a couple of
health
months.
insurance with a
That's how bad it
pregnant
was.
wife. You cut, yeah. So I
Well,
mean
we went
that,
on Medicaid.
Mr. Minang, you're all right. So, but you did cut insurance. But I think what caused us to really strive over that was because it was cut without a conversation. If you have that conversation ahead of time and decide
Yeah.
that this is what we are going to do, it totally changes it. And then the other thing I'm going to say, please do not perseverate on it. Once it is done, it's done. There's no point in trying to make a point that, oh, you did it wrongly. No.
Or I had told you 2 years ago that this is what was going to happen.
Yes, there's
You,
no
you, you,
point. It makes no
you
difference.
own it when the two of you have agreed. And that's why it's
Yes.
important to discuss about these things, no matter how hard the conversation is going to be. Because by the time you're getting out of that conversation, you're agreeing. It doesn't matter what your original opinion was getting into it, you own the consequences,
Yeah.
whatever they are. But if somebody takes the decision alone, then sorry, you end up with that situation where somebody might start telling you, "I told you so."
Yeah.
Uh, so,
A-
so,
And I
so,
remember back then just figuring out that we didn't have any insurance and I was pregnant with a second child on the way. It was something had to be done. So I kicked into gear. How am I going to go to the hospital with this child? And that's how we ended up realizing that I could qualify for Medicaid because I was pregnant, but he couldn't. So those are all the things that I could have sat there and quarreled with him and not move. Don't spend your energy like you're saying, you're asking for strategies. Don't spend your energy quarreling about what you cannot change. Spend the energy
focus
looking
on what you
for
can do.
ways to
Solutions, yeah.
solve it. And then last but not the least, you guys come up with a plan. You can never ever work through this if you don't talk and come up with a plan for how you are going to get over this crisis, this hump right now. What is happening? Does someone need to go back to school before they can get a job? Do they need to just go get a different job?
Or a
D-
second job.
or a second job? What is happening? And really being intentional about having that conversation, because if you don't have it, you just end up stressing each other out and one person is hanging out there, um feeling like they're being left alone.
Yeah, but I think that was a very important question, and to emphasize that quarreling or arguing is not surprising. It's a very difficult situation, and a lot of us immigrant couples, we find ourselves in that situation at least a number of times because of us adjusting to life in this country. Sometimes early on, sometimes when you're already even in your midlife and you decide to start a business, but then a lot of things happen that you didn't foresee, and you guys lose a lot of money. Or sometimes it's just an economic downturn that's affecting people that are in your part in your industry, and you need to retool.
Mhm.
So it's difficult conversations, but if the conversations are around budgeting, you never get it wrong. But you're gonna fight. There's gonna be nights when you're gonna cry yourself to sleep. But if it's around budgeting and planning, you always guaranteed to come out of that a much better couple. So I think that takes us to
I
the
think
top
we
of the
have
hour.
one
Okay,
last
one last
question.
question. Trouble seems to appear when trying to downsize because of finances. What is the way forward or way out if a partner refuses to accept in downsizing? How are they going to pay staying keeping the status quo? I mean, we have that problem with a business, right? You have a partner that's emotionally attached to what is going on, but you run out of cash. And so it's a choice between running the business down all the way down, or cutting your losses and stop digging. So
Well,
it's refuse to downsize is never not a choice. But you have to have that hard conversation anyway. You need to convince the person with the numbers.
I think that the thing is, when we listen to this book, Jacob, I think negotiating like your life
Like your
depends
life
on it.
depends on it, Chris Voss. Yeah,
Yeah, when we listened to that book, there was a concept in that book that was really interesting. It was hearing no in the different ways that it is being said. Like
yeah. There's a power in the word
somebody
no. Yeah.
saying no does not mean that they're saying no. There are other things they're saying to you in that no. No, because I don't think that we will survive. No, because I really do need to have these things, right? And we cannot downsize to that.
So get them an alternative.
And so I'm saying to you that it's not really that they're saying no, we cannot downsize, period, let's crash. No, what they're saying is that we need to find other alternatives that would still provide us with the ability to meet these certain needs. There are some non-negotiables that each partner comes to this conversation with. And with those non negotiables, taking that and actually working through them would help. If you are not open to working through those non negotiables, like, oh, you can't cancel out my pedicure, period. No, you can't cancel out my pedicure. Yes, I do it once a week. Maybe instead of canceling pedicure period, let's negotiate that it's going to be on a once a month. And that is different than just saying we can't you can't do pedicure again, that's it, it's done. And those are some of the things that couples are saying or spouses are saying when you're trying to downsize. They're trying for you guys to negotiate on some of those
On what to go and what to
yeah.
stay. Yeah, but good question all the same.
We're at the top
So,
of the hour.
so we're at top of the hour. Unfortunately, exciting conversation. When any conversation around finances, it's deeper than this. Trust me, guys. We barely scratch the surface, but
Yeah,
hopefully enough material as a teaser for you to want to dig deep on your own, do your own research, uh, and or you can schedule a one-on-one with us, and we'll continue the conversation. Unfortunately, we have to end here. Thank you all so much
let
for
me do
joining.
some
Thanks for the good
reminders,
question.
Jacob.
Yes, go ahead with reminders, Dillis.
Some reminders. Please remember to next week we'll be focusing on intimacy, building intimacy in your relationship.
So,
So
Dillis, are we doing
remember,
that during Thanksgiving week or the week
oh
after
no,
that?
the week after that, the week
Okay,
after
just
that.
making sure. Thank
Thanksgiving will give everybody a break. The week after that, we'll be doing, we'll do the podcast. We'll release the podcast on Monday about building intimacy in your relationship, and then Thursday, join us again for another live conversation. We would love to have a guest couple. As you can see, Jacob and I are not as fun as if we had a guest couple. So if you're out there, please come on, join us. I'll reach out to you. If I do, please don't say no to me. All right. And when we put out the podcast, you're always free to submit questions. There's the Google link that you can click on and submit questions. And please remember, if you have a couple out there that could use what we just said, remember to Jacob.
Please like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel.
All
Thank you
right.
guys so
Before
much.
we
And
go, Jacob,
I'm
say a
gonna say a
prayer.
quick prayer to close out, thanking our Blessed Mother for interceding for us through His Son, to our Son. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy
Holy
Mary,
Mary,
Mother of
Mother of
God,
God,
pray for
pray
us
for us
sinners
sinners now and the
now and in
hour of
the
our
hour of our death.
death.
Amen. Thank you guys so much. Talk to you
Thank you.
guys next week, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about love. Like you and me all night, and let's talk about love.